going to get things started with Rusty DePass and Jim Smithwick. They'll lead us in the national anthem. Now I'd like to ask Jim Morse to come up here and lead us in our invocation.
Hello, I'd like to share a little poem. I invite you to pray in your faith as I will pray in mine. This day, God our Father, light of life, we are thankful for this day. By your grace to live it fully, by your light to find our way. Sustain, protect, forgive us as we turn to forgive. Make us instruments of peace by the golden rule to live. Give lions hearts of courage for the challenges we face. Understanding, heart of wisdom for the choices we embrace. Help us treasure sacred now on day of life enthroned. Let us love and laugh and labor. This day cannot be postponed. May these precious hours glow with luster finally made from the radiance of others and solitude's sweet shade. Keep us ever mindful of how richly we are blessed. Help us care for those in need, in harm's way, in pain, oppressed. The good we can accomplish, let us do without delay. No kindness be neglected, will not pass again this way. Too quickly comes the darkness, too surely the unknown. Too soon today's a shadow of times forever flown. Thank you. Amen.
Thank you, Jim. I'm going to call Mike Dominic up here. He's going to welcome our visiting Rotarians and guests.
Good afternoon, everyone. At this time, I'd like to welcome our visiting Rotarians. Today we have one of Michael Otis from the Columbia East Club. And also at this time, we'd like to recognize any guests that we have with us.
Hello, my name is Elliot Powell. Again with me this week is Major Henry Morris. He's the new head of the Salvation Army of the Midlands. He and his wife, Major Benita Morris, are teaming it up, just like the Colsons did. And we'd like to welcome them here. They were in Jackson, Mississippi before. Again, he is a former Rotarian, Paul House Harris Fellow, so he'll blend right in. We're welcoming him again today, and thanks for being here.
My guest, Kristen Cobb. Kristen actually lives in Camden, but she's the new director of the Harbison Theater at Midlands Catholic College, and she's past president of the Camden Rotary Club, and she's looking at various Rotary clubs, and so I asked her to come have a look at ours. So y'all please help me welcome Kristen Cobb.
Hi, my name is Kush Tata. My guest today is Dr. Craig Witherspoon. He's the current the superintendent of Richland County School District 1.
Good afternoon, I'm Audrey Brown, and I have as my guest today Daniel Andrews. Daniel is a native Columbian, and we went to high school together, but we're not going to talk about how long ago that was. And he recently relocated back here from Houston and is a professional connector. So if you want to know more about what that is, he'll be around after the meeting to see what he can connect for you.
Good afternoon, I'm Carl Myers. My guest today is Andy Shane, the Columbia Bureau Chief for the Post and Courier.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Andrew Clarkson. I'm pleased to have again with me my guest, Will Anderson. Will works for Computer Sales and Service. They're a technology integrator firm and a great firm partner of ours.
Great to have you all here today. Thank you.
All right, I have a couple of announcements that I want to make before I turn it over to Stephen for just a minute. We are experiencing some pretty significant difficulties with our website, and so if you have been getting your newsletter and it hasn't been as up to date as you would like it to be, please bear with me and Mike Dominic and our friend Cindy Benson, who has been trying to help us with that. So for the time being, please check your Friday emails for updates on who our speakers will be in the coming weeks. And also, you can always watch any of the videos on our YouTube channel. There will be a link in the Friday emails to the YouTube channel. So thanks for your patience on that. I have no idea how to troubleshoot any of that. Like, I built the website, but I don't know how to troubleshoot it. So hopefully I'll be learning a little bit more for my skill set on that. Also, the board, we are going to meet this coming Thursday, September 28th at 11:30 at the Boy Scouts office. So please put that on your calendars, board members. I look forward to seeing all of you there. And now I'm going to turn it over to Stephen, and he's going to talk about the upcoming social.
Thank you, President Carey. Good afternoon. Everybody pull out your calendar, because 2 weeks from today, we've got an important event taking place in our Columbia Rotary Club, and that is our October Club Social. It is going to take place at Gregg Park from 5:30 to about 7:30. That's going to be a fun time. We're not going to meet that Monday, so 2 weeks from today, you'll be the only one here if you show up at this hour. 5:30 to 7:30 at Gregg Park. We're going to have barbecue and all the fixings. Doc's Barbecue is actually going to be catering the event for us. Last year we did something that I think was a lot of fun, and we're going to ask that we do it again this year. This helps kind of defray some of the costs, and that is bring a dessert. So if you're coming, bring your spouse, bring your family if you like. This is a time for us to get to know each other outside of the club, but also bring a dessert with you to share. I think, Rusty, you cooked a lot of key lime pies last year. They were very popular. When I went to get some, they were all gone. So again, 2 weeks from today, 5:30 to 7:30, our club social at Gregg Park. Bring a guest, bring a dessert, come have fun. You've already paid for it, so come and enjoy some fellowship with your fellow Rotarians. Thank you.
If I might, we have a guest who didn't get introduced because he's a guest of somebody who hadn't gotten here yet. But Terry Richardson is the father of our speaker, and he's a lawyer extraordinaire, and I think he was a senior or maybe a graduate student when I was a freshman at Clemson, and I've known him that long, and he's a great guy.
Welcome, we're glad to have you here. All right, where's Libby? I saw Libby here just a minute ago. There she is. Libby, you want to come on up and do health and happiness real quick?
Thanks, President Carey. Not much to report, but a few things. Most people say they're here, they're happy, they're healthy, and I think that's all good news, so we're glad for that. But I will remind you, for those of you who knew Jim Morris, his funeral was this past Saturday. He was a longtime member of this club and a great pillar in this community. So many, I can't even remember all the roles he filled in the community, but just keep the Morris family in your thoughts as they go through this grieving process. Also, Jim Hunsinger, the husband of Rhonda Hunsinger, Some of us may have known, some may not have known, he had emergency open heart surgery. But he is home and doing very well, Rhonda reports. So let's keep them in our thoughts and prayers also. Doug Cochran, I know Doug's here somewhere. Yes, Doug's son will be pinned Lieutenant Colonel. I think that's right, Doug? Lieutenant Colonel on Friday in Florida. He's in the Air Force. That's a great Please give him all our best. Jesse Bullard reports he and his wife are expecting a little boy. And since they have a little girl, this is wonderful news. I think in February they will have a little boy. I don't know that Lee Lumpkin is here. I hope she won't mind me sharing. Her daughter got engaged this weekend in New York. So all that's big news, all that's big news. And I wanted to share with you all for the women, you may sit back and chuckle on this. For the men, especially some of the younger people, but for most men, this is a reminder. It is something you've heard before, but it does not hurt to remind you. And I know we have some very handsome, savvy men in this room, and you know how to handle women, but just to help you maybe a little bit, I want to remind all of you, there are trigger words that women say, and if you can understand the terminology of women, it might help you throughout your entire life, especially some of you younger men, okay? So I will start with, when a woman says, fine. Okay, so most people know what my definitions are going to be. This is the word women use to end an argument when they are right and you need to shut up. 5 minutes. If she's getting dressed, this means at least half an hour. 5 minutes is only 5 minutes if you have been given 5 minutes to finish watching the game before you have to help around the house. Nothing. Okay. This is the calm before the storm. This means something, and you should be on your toes. Arguments that begin with this usually end in fine. Another one is go ahead. This is a dare, not permission. Do not do it. Do not. A loud sigh. This is actually a word, but it is a nonverbal statement often misunderstood by men. A loud sigh means she is thinking you're an idiot and wonder why she's wasting her time arguing with you. And refer back to number 3 for the meaning of nothing. The next one is that's okay. This is one of the most dangerous statements a woman can make to a man. That's okay means she wants to think long and hard before deciding how you will pay for your mistake. Thanks. A woman is thanking you. Do not question it or faint. Just say you're welcome. I want to add in a clause here. This is true unless she said, thanks a lot. That is pure sarcasm. If she is not thanking you at all, do not say you're welcome. That will bring on a whatever. And the final one is whatever. This woman is trying to say you're an idiot and she knows she's right. I hope this helps some of you remember the terminology and how you should react to it. And have a great week.
Libby, I have been guilty of all of those terms, and a lot of yes. So we've been doing this thing every week called Discover Rotary, and before I forget, Jerry Bright, I wanted to welcome you back after your hip disaster. So wanted to welcome you back. So we've been doing this thing called Discover Rotary every week, and we've been asking longtime members to come up and talk about what they love about Rotary and what they love about this club. So today, we get Glenn Ward. If you'll welcome him.
Thank you very much. I'll be very brief. Thank you, President Carey. I think I know most of you and have for many years, and you know me, but I'm a lifelong South Carolinian, born in this state, reared in this state, and born in the little town of Kingstree, South Carolina, if you know where that is, down in Williamsburg County, where the barbecue is really good. I'm the oldest of 4 children. grew up in a minister's home, which makes me what we call a PK, preacher's kid. When I was a kid, the church people said that the preacher's kids were the meanest kids around. And our comeback to that was, well, we got it from the elders' kids and the deacons' kids, so we had a little comeback to that. The oldest of 4 children, we lived in Bamberg for a while, Andrews for a while, Lake City for a while, and ended up in Columbia in 1976, so this is home now. I married my wife Denise. She's also from Lake City, South Carolina. 27 years ago, we have 2 children, Trey and Emily, 21 and 18 years of age. Both of them are here in Columbia College, doing well, thankfully for that. And just to give you a quick little bite of my work, most people ask me about that. 25 years ago, I worked with First Citizens Bank here in Columbia, and I was out giving little talks for Rotary clubs and church groups and not-for-profit groups and so forth. And long story short, business groups began asking me to come and speak to their employees and so forth. So I turned my avocation into my vocation and left the bank November of 1992, 25 years ago. Since that time, I've spoken in 36 states across the country, and I bill myself as a humorist and inspirational speaker. Now with that usually surprises people. Last night I was out of town speaking, and this guy came up to me afterwards. I thought I saw some people to my side, peripheral vision, talking about me before I got up. And sure enough, this guy came to me and he said, you know, before you got up to speak, I pointed somebody and said, that guy looks like an undertaker. So after 25 years, Randolph, if this doesn't work out, I'm coming to look for you for a job. But my own son told me a while back, he said, Daddy, you know, before you lost all that weight on that diet you were on, he said, you know, you used to be heavy and rotund and big, and you used to have a big smile and a big presence about you, and you were funny. He said, now you look like some retired colonel coming in a room to dress somebody down and choose somebody else and stuff. So anyhow, I am a humorous, inspirational speaker, thoroughly enjoy what I do. Joined this club. Dr. Charlie Sloan, the late great Dr. Charlie Sloan, was the one who invited me to this club back in, as I said, 2002. It was a joy to be invited here. It's been a blessing to have been here all these years. Dr. Sloan was my mentor in many ways, a dear friend, and I thank him, even though he's in heaven now, I thank him for the delight of inviting me to this wonderful family of the Columbia Rotary Club. I've learned this: Columbia Rotary Club and Rotary at large aligns with my upbringing in the minister's home, where I was taught as a child that you serve people no matter who they are, no matter how rich they are, how poor they are, no matter their background, you love them for who they are. You serve them wholeheartedly. Service above self. That lines up with my upbringing, and that's why I enjoy this club so much. The rate of return that I continue to earn on my investment of time and treasure and talent that I've tried to invest into this club and into Rotary over these years has a wonderful rate of return, and I will never be able to express the joy of that and the full rate of that, because you can never outgive Rotary. I've come to learn that. God bless you. Thank you.
We always love hearing you speak. So we're going to go ahead and get to our speaker, because I know everybody has been wanting to hear what he has to say, and we're very appreciative that he was able to come and reschedule with us so quickly. He was supposed to be with us during Irma, and so I'm going to bring Adam Jordan up here to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you, Libby, for that. I've been married 16 years, and all I can say is too little, too late. I'm still married, yes, so maybe not too little, but I couldn't use that 16 years ago. I am fortunate to be able to introduce Jay Richardson to you today. Jay grew up in Barnwell, South Carolina, before attending Vanderbilt University. My wife Laura actually knew Jay and his wife Macon at Vanderbilt, and I asked her for some dirt on Jay, and she said no. Something about mutually assured destruction, and then we stopped talking after that. So after graduating in 1999 with a biology degree, Jay moved to Hawaii and worked at a poolside bar and grill. I guess dreams do come true. Jay then earned his law degree from the Chicago Law School, where he served as articles editor for the University of Chicago Law Review, and right fielder for the law school's championship softball team. Following law school, Jay served as a clerk for 7th Circuit Court of Appeals Judge Richard Posner, and, listen carefully, U.S. Supreme Court Chief Justice William Rehnquist. He then practiced with Kellogg Huber Hanson of Washington, D.C., representing a variety of companies in contract, fraud, intellectual property, and antitrust disputes. Jay returned home to South Carolina in 2009 to prosecute gangs, violent criminals, and narcotics traffickers as an assistant U.S. attorney. He is currently the U.S. Attorney's Deputy Criminal Chief, focusing on white-collar financial crimes and public corruption. Can't imagine what keeps you busy in South Carolina, Jay. He recently served as lead prosecutor in obtaining the death penalty for Dylan Roof as a result of the horrific attacks on the parishioners of the Charleston Emmanuel AME Church. Most importantly, he is married to Macon, and he is blessed with not one, not two, not three, but 4 little girls. They are active members of Trinity Cathedral and involved in Heathwood Hall. Please join me in welcoming Jay to Columbia Road.
Thank you, Adam. I'm most appreciative he didn't bring up the Alabama-Vanderbilt score from this weekend.
It took all the strength I had.
I knew he was thinking of. I appreciate y'all having me here. I want to spend what I've been told is a limited amount of time with you, telling you a story about what happened on June the 17th of 2015 down in Charleston. It's a story that we put on in a trial with more than 730 exhibits, 60 different witnesses, a closing argument that took more than 2 hours alone. I want to try to do it for you in about 20 minutes. So I'm going to leave a fair bit out, so bear with me. The afternoon of June the 17th, African-American parishioners gathered together at Mother Emanuel in Charleston on Calhoun Street. They had a business meeting first, and after that meeting, the very best among us, devoted members of their families and communities, they stayed around for a Bible study. This was the weekly Wednesday night Bible study, and this week they were studying Mark 4, the parable of the sower. After the Bible study started and the group sang in worship, they welcomed a 13th person to that Bible study, Dylan Storm Root. He appeared to that group to be harmless. The group was gathered in tables not unlike the ones in front of you, 4 round tables, each with Bibles open. Emmanuel's pastor, the Reverend Clementa Pinckney, welcomed the interloper, handed him a Bible, gave him a copy of the handout that Myra Thompson had prepared on the gospel that night. He sat with them for more than half an hour as they discussed and studied and told stories about the lesson that they were there to learn that night. As they closed their eyes after about an hour-long Bible study, they closed their eyes in prayer to close for that night, to go home to their families and friends. At that moment, the defendant made clear what he had been planning for months. He was not there to find the Lord. He was not there to get help from so many who would have provided it to him. Instead of a Bible for study, he had come armed with a Glock 45. But the defendant in this case, Dylan Roof, had done far more in preparation than just show up with a Glock 45. Well in advance of that fateful moment, he had made extensive preparations for his hate-filled attack. For more than 2 years, he had researched his racist ideology on the internet. He had spent time identifying church after church, festivals, other locations where he could attack African Americans. He made a choice. After creating those lists of African American churches and locations, he picked the one that, as he described, he thought would make the biggest wave. A location steeped in history, a place that he imagined and believed would strike at the very core of that community and resonate across the nation. He'd been scouting Mother Emanuel for more than 6 months. He began just before Christmas in 2014, making these reconnaissance trips, going down, visiting, at one point speaking with the parishioners that walked outside the church, making phone calls to the church. In April of 2015, he bought that Glock 45 here in Columbia, West Columbia. Right? He set about acquiring sufficient magazines to hold the vast array of hollow point 45 caliber ammunition that he acquired. And he set about practicing. He set about preparing himself mentally and physically to do what he planned to do. He set about setting up a situation where he would see what the very last moments of parishioners' lives would look like. He wrote and then published on the internet a racist manifesto, not limiting his racism to African Americans, but covering a wide gamut, from Jews to East Asians. He included a curated set of photographs, you see a few copies here, conveying his own racist ideology. Having done that on the morning of June the 17th, as the parishioners were gathering at Mother Emanuel, he drove about an hour and a half, contemplating what he was going to do, leaving his mother's home out in Eastover, driving a route that many of us have taken, ending up on Calhoun Street, down in Charleston. Having driven about an hour and a half, he spent about a half hour outside in his car. Before entering, he loaded not just the handgun that he had with 11 rounds, but 7 additional magazines. Each magazine filled with exactly 11 hollow point 45 caliber rounds. 88 rounds in total. 88 was a number that mattered to him. H is the 8th letter of the alphabet. So like other white supremacists, he used the term 88, the phrase 88, to refer to Hail Hitler. This was a code to him reflecting the beliefs that he took into the church that night. As that group of 12 were studying the gospel, Dylan Roof walked inside. He carried around the waist a tactical pouch with both the gun and the 7 additional magazines. Inside the church, he sat with them. You see in the top left corner the picture of the Reverend Daniel Simmons, Sr. He was the group's weekly leader. These were pictures that were taken during the Bible study by Tawanza Sanders. They were posted on Snapchat. They work on a phone. They're a little hard to see in this room. But if you take a look at the picture on the right, you see in the foreground there, that's DePayne Middleton. Right behind her is Myra Thompson. Myra Thompson was an aspiring minister. She was leading Bible study for the very first time that night. And just to the right of Myra, you can see the young white man sitting at these round tables during the Bible study, listening to their discussion about the parable of the sower, where the seed will wilt and where it will grow. That Wednesday night, as that group finished studying, and they stood, as they did each and every Wednesday night, he stood to offer their closing prayer. He made the most fateful of choices and opened fire. Remaining seating while the rest stood, he first shot the Reverend Clementa Pinckney, the very man who had pulled out the chair, given him a Bible, welcomed him to the group. As the rest of the 12 scattered to try to seek shelter underneath the tables that still held their Bibles, the Reverend Dan Simmons Sr. called out, trying to get to his pastor And to Dylan Roof, he was stopped only when Roof turned the pistol on him, coldly shooting him over and over again. Then turning to the others, Roof repeatedly pulled the trigger, feeling the recoil on shot after shot as he filled the bodies of these good men and women with round after round. As each magazine was empty, shell casings tumbling across the parish hall, he tossed them aside and reloaded yet another before standing over victim after victim and executing them. He shot an entire magazine of 11 rounds into the 87-year-old body of Susie Jackson. He stood over Myra Thompson the night that she first led Bible study. He executed the church's elderly caretaker, Ethel Lance, its preacher, Sharonda Coleman Singleton, her librarian, Cynthia Hurd, and a sweet vocalist in DePayne Middleton. As Roof's assault continued, Miss Polly Shepard could see his boots walking closer and closer to the table that she was hiding under. As he got to the end of that road, Dylan Roof saw Polly Shepard and heard her doing what she knew to do, praying out loud, seeking the Lord's help. Dylan Roof looked at her, told her to shut up, and told her that he was going to leave her alive. He chose to leave her alive so that she could tell the story of his horrific attack. As he did so, right beside Miss Polly, Tywanza Sanders heroically interjected. Though he himself had already been shot, he stood up to the defendant, or I should say propped himself up, unable to stand, propped himself up on an arm, and told the defendant that he didn't have to do this, that we mean you no harm. Roof rejected the entreaty, instead telling him that he had to do this, that y'all are raping our white women, y'all are taking over the world, I have to kill everybody. Then standing just feet away from Tywanza, he executed him. Right beside Tywanza lay Felicia Sanders. Miss Felicia is Tywanza's mother. Miss Felicia lay there with the granddaughter that she chose to bring to Bible study that night. As she described holding that granddaughter, that 11-year-old girl, so tightly that she feared in an effort to keep her quiet, she would suffocate the girl. Miraculously, and indeed I believe because of Tywanza's heroic intervention, Miss Felicia and her granddaughter survived. But they did so by laying on the blood-soaked floor and playing dead as her friends, family, and indeed son lay dying around her. In the adjoining room, separated by a thin wall, was the Reverend Pinckney's wife, Miss Jennifer Pinckney. She, upon hearing the gunfire, had crawled underneath the desk with their 6-year-old daughter, Milana. Underneath the desk, as this assault took place and the shots rang out, they sat together, each with fingers over the other's lips, begging each to stay quiet. Despite the fact that rounds entered that room when going through the wall, Jennifer and her daughter managed to escape physical harm. The defendant that night, he left behind a scene that nobody can or should ever have to fathom. Yet as he did so, the defendant exited calmly. Indeed, the Reverend Daniel Simmons had managed, despite the wounds, to crawl to the edge of the doorway where he was in the process of dying. Yet Dylan Roof stepped over him and walked out that back door. Unaffected, calm. He took that Glock 45, he got back into his car, and he slipped away into the night. Why did he do it? It's the question I get asked more often. It's the question that I've asked myself more often than any other. Why would he or anyone else do such a thing? He was not driven by some passionate anger. You see a calmness about him. This wasn't passionate anger. This wasn't someone who was excited. This is someone who was cold and calculated. Someone who had spent years developing and driving this ideological hatred. This research that was done by a terribly misguided, yet intellectual young man. He sought to do two different things. He sought to bring about racist retribution, to get back at the African American race for his perceived slights against the white race. But it wasn't just about racist retribution. He also sought and hoped it would agitate others, cause unrest, deepen long-standing divisions, serve as a catalyst in the minds of others for division, distrust, and hate to take hold and to grow. Dylan Roof wanted his message of hatred to be told. He wanted people to see what he believed was the truth. He left Miss Polly alive inside so that she could tell his story. He published a manifesto on the internet for all to read. He gave a chilling 2-hour-long video confession. Once arrested and incarcerated and having confessed, he wrote yet another manifesto in prison, expounding upon the racist views that he had expressed previously. Even during the trial, he continued to wear white supremacist symbols on his shoes in front of the jury, in front of the families, in front of the survivors. Even after found guilty, he continued to express the belief that he did the right thing and that he would do it again. You see, and the jury saw who he was, what was in his mind, by the extensive planning that he took, by the calculated choices that he made, and the catastrophic results that came about. More than 70 fired rounds that night. More than 60 of those striking African American parishioners. The gruesome wounds to their bodies only began to tell the story of the damage. These were particularly good men and women. Innocent people that Ruth chose to target because they were good, because they were innocent, because they were the best among us. Let me close with this. I would hope that as I went through this process, that I could come to you or other groups and tell you something profound that I now know about race relations. How this act is going to overcome my inherent politeness and this veneer of silence, laying bare that true racism, true racist evil exists. I'm not sure I can say that. But perhaps I have something insightful to tell you about the nature of capital punishment, the use of the death penalty in cases like this or others. But despite the fact that almost everybody now, whether I know them or not, feels the need to come tell me their objections or complaints about the use of capital punishment, I'm not sure I have any more insight into it than I did before. Or perhaps I'd hoped that I would have some overarching message to leave you with. I will tell you that I personally have taken a much greater effort and interest in fostering and living the deep and abiding faith that was demonstrated by these survivors and their families. But at the end, I can't do much of that. And to the end, all I can really tell you is that my faith is indeed renewed. My hope for society continues to be strong. Because despite the horrific attack, the nature of what he did and the manner in which he did it, he failed. He absolutely and completely failed. He did not deepen divisions. He brought people together. He didn't destroy faith. He made it grow. These families of victims and survivors, they didn't respond with hate. They didn't respond in the manner that we might have expected, certainly would have been justified had they. But instead, they responded with an even deeper faith in God, an even stronger reliance on their families, a more dedicated view to the importance of their church, their families, and their community. I appreciate each of you having me here. I'm happy to take questions if people have them. I was told there are a couple of ringers in the room that will ask questions no matter the topic. So I'm not going to point out who they pointed to when they told me that. But anybody have questions? Yes, sir.
How was he affected by the forgiveness he was given from the other members of the church or family members?
So I'll say two things about that. One, it's a little hard to know. He certainly did not give any indication that it affected him in a positive way. Right? Throughout the entire process, all the way through the end, he continued to express the same views. He continued to wear the white supremacy symbols. He continued to expound on those ideas and continued to say that he believed he had done the right thing and that he would do it again. Certainly, none of those actions suggested that he was affected in any positive way by that kind of forgiveness. Yes, sir?
The appeals court, what throughout he wanted new lawyers because he couldn't be represented by, what was it, a Jewish person? And I can't remember what the other was, but I'm 67. Is he going to be put to death before I die?
I don't know the answer to that. That is something that's outside of my control.
What's the normal appeals? I mean, 20 years?
Yeah, the normal is a difficult question to answer. There is no normal. I mean, the one thing you say about these capital cases is there is no normal. There is no benchmark that you can rely on. There is no standard operating procedure. It is a serious thing for the government to put one of its citizens to death for the actions that they took. And so the system and we as prosecutors, we take it very seriously. And we want to ensure that when it is carried out, that it has been done in all the right ways. How long it's going to take for courts and others to make that determination, I simply don't know. Yes, ma'am.
During the trial, did he have any family support at all?
He did have family support throughout, including in part during the trial. His mother was there at the beginning. She had a spell right after opening statements in the case, had to be taken out by medical staff, and was not able, I think, to return. He had other members of his family who were there. He had grandparents with which he was very close, and they attended on a number of days. Yes, sir.
Can you give me insight? He had an African-American friend. Was he just incapable of making human connection? I mean, empathy with his victims? You know, it just boggles my mind.
So, it's an interesting question. Some of you have probably read in the newspaper or other news accounts that it was reported that he had an African-American friend. He denied that. Where the truth is on that spectrum, I'm not certain of. But he denied that as far as having an African-American friend. The individual who certainly knew him, they certainly were acquaintances. Whether they were friends or not is hard to tell. It did not appear that he was incapable of having relationships. He did have some. I don't have much insight beyond that. Yes, sir, in the back.
How can it be, and this is not to cheapen the work you've done and the results in the trial, but how can it be that a person like this is not completely crazy? I mean, just a complete, irretrievable lunatic.
I think, we had a number of different hearings about that. And what I'll say is, Judge Gergel, who is an excellent judge, very thoughtful, spent a great deal of time looking into that question. He was examined extensively by a number of very accomplished doctors. And as Judge Gergel determined, he was not indeed in any way insane or incapable of understanding what was happening. He was, in fact, an absolute and complete racist. And you might, and I think the defense suggested, and I'm not saying anything that's not now in the public record, but the defense effectively suggested that being a racist, having that view about a race that he had, that hate-filled view, that itself is somehow delusional, right? That's as close to insane as anybody was able to get with him. That if you are a racist, you must be insane. I can understand the argument there. It's simply not insanity in the way we think of it. Anybody who harbors those types of views about a whole segment of our society, they are certainly seriously misguided. But it doesn't mean that they have gotten there through sort of a mental illness process. Yes, sir.
Did his views on race come from his parents, or where did he learn what he professed?
I think overwhelmingly what the evidence showed was he acquired those views on his own. He did his own research on the internet. He did his own investigation to come about that ideology. I do not believe there was any evidence that suggested that he got it from his family or that he really got it from friends. I think it really came from him internally. Yes, sir.
Of course, his grandfather is an attorney who is a wonderful man.
Joe and Lucy, I spoke a moment ago about his grandparents, Joe and Lucy Ruth. Joe is an attorney, extraordinarily well respected here, and his wife Lucy were his grandparents, and they are, by all accounts, and certainly everything I know, real pillars of the community.
So my question is, based on what I read, we don't have anything that we could do to him to kill him anyway, because we don't have any more of that liquid that we have to use to put somebody to sleep. Is that not correct? So he's not ever gonna be put to sleep.
I think I'll have to no comment that. Anybody else?
Did he think he was going to get away? Does he even care when he was arrested?
What he reported, and again, all I can tell you is what he said. What he actually thought. What he said was he did not intend to live. He intended to be killed. He reported that in a couple of different contexts. He said it at the time. He also said in his confession he did not intend to live. And when he got away, he was a bit surprised by that. Yes, sir, in the back.
Chad, I appreciate the thoroughness with which you do your job and have done it and communicated it. My question is, based on these writings and things that he got on the internet, are there law enforcement people really seeking to get to the bottom of those groups and others that are spewing this stuff out? Is there a concerted effort to do that? Is it just kind of falling by the wayside since it's not directly, with the trial?
One of the challenges we face, just talking sort of more generally, is it is not against the law to say things that are extraordinarily offensive. That's what the First Amendment is for. If the First Amendment just protected things that everybody liked, it wouldn't be all that useful, right? The First Amendment is there to protect those things that large segments of society find not just distasteful, but offensive and vulgar and wholly inappropriate. However, when those are simply ideological views that are conveyed without action, threat of action, attempts at action, that's not a crime. As much as sometimes we may want it to be, it's not a crime. I will tell you that there's an extensive effort broadly by law enforcement to ensure that those who may take that step from words into action are identified and stopped before it happens. But it's a very difficult task for law enforcement to undertake. Yes, ma'am.
He clearly has a hatred not just for black folks, but for anybody that's not white, based on his recent attempt to get rid of his two attorneys, one who's Jewish and one who's Indian. I think the irony here is that Judge Gergel is Jewish, and that was the judge of the case. And it's just like, wow, he has a hatred for anybody that's not exactly like him, evidently.
I think that's a fair description. He was also represented by David Brock, was his primary defense lawyer, who is also Jewish. Yes, ma'am.
Did he ever have a reaction to the outpouring that happened in Charleston after his experience he had down there? Because that was huge.
If he did, I never saw it. Obviously, we don't know everything, but if he did, I never saw it. Yes, sir.
You described him earlier as misguided intellectual. With his repeated attempts at firing his attorneys, what do you think his end game is? Is it?
I think what his end game is, and I think this is based on Judge Gergel found this as well, but I believe his end game is to seek racist retribution and to agitate race relations.
But more on a personal level, is he trying? You mentioned him trying to get the death penalty. You think he's trying to expedite that process?
No. I think he is single-minded, right? He has the goal of agitating race relations, right, to cause an uprising, to cause whites to begin to see the light, as in his phrase. And so that is the primary goal for him. Whether he gets the death penalty or doesn't, whatever else he does is secondary to that goal. His primary goal goes back to his racist ideology. One might compare him to, as an Islamic terrorist, right? They have an ideological view that trumps all else. Yes, sir.
Is he being held in solitary confinement now, or is he in general population?
He is currently in Terre Haute, Indiana, on death row. The exact nature of those conditions, I'll have to decline to answer. Thank you all very much. I appreciate y'all having me.
I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I've been sitting here with chills listening to that. I guess I had never really dug into it on that level, but to know that that kind of hate exists, I hope none of us ever experience that. It's frightening. So let's go ahead and end with song.